10 years, man. 10 years. Yes, it's time to have awkward conversations with your high school friends. It's Grosse Pointe Blank, coming up next on Least Important Things.
Welcome back, Pointers. You haven't changed a bit.
Don't say that.
What do you do, Mark?
Professional killer.
Oh, good for you. It's a growth industry. Do you have to do postgraduate work for that, or can you jump right in?
There's a contract out in your life, but I'm not going to do it. It's either because I'm in love with your daughter or I have a newfound respect for life.
That punk is either in love with that guy's daughter or he has a newfound respect for life.
Debbie, I'm in love with you. I know we can make this relationship work. It's not easy for me. I always control my emotions. I just need time to change. Why don't you just join the union? This union, is there going to be meetings? Of course! No meetings. I want you to think about this, and you don't have to answer it now. But Debbie, will you marry me?
Welcome to a podcast called Least Important Things, a show about movies, friendship, and finding meaning in the most important of the least important things. I'm your host, Luke Ferris. In today's episode, it's a special reunion. It's huge as we discuss the 1997 action comedy cult classic, Grosse Pointe Blank. Joining me today, I'm really thankful to have two local experts, Grosse Pointe legends, turn good. First off, Mike Wynne, of course. Welcome back, Mike, to the show. New year. You excited?
I am so excited to just kind of like go down memory lane.
I have a lot of questions about Grosse Pointe, and that's why we have a new guest, his debut on the show, Peter Tellarico. Welcome to the show. Why has it been this long?
Well, thanks for having me, Luke. I couldn't tell you how honored I am to be part of this. This is a exciting podcast to be on. I've been an avid listener and follower for my entire time since you've been putting on the podcast. So I couldn't tell you how honored I am to be here, and I appreciate it.
We're glad to have you, but you've been a supporter behind the scenes. We go way back. For listeners, viewers, friends of the show, Peter is one of Mike's original friends from Grosse Pointe, which we'll get into. That especially during Mike's wedding, when we spent a lot of time together, I stole him as a friend. I just said, I'm going to take this guy from you, Michael.
The word bromance really rings a bell. I think is what it became.
Does.
It is so true that, I mean, for those that were there, I mean, we saw that young love kind of bud up. But it was as a friend of both of you, it was truly a treat of my wedding to watch you guys kind of become friends, like live and like to watch it happen live.
Completely platonic in nature.
Yes, of course. And this is before the podcast. This is before I started a podcast to hang out with my friends. So this is before it all started.
One does have to wonder, if one must say that the relationship is platonic, does that automatically mean it definitely is not platonic?
I watched Luke grow up.
Yeah. Flourished like a flower. Okay. I have two experts here, so we're going to get into some details here, but I wanted to start off, gentlemen. First off, did your high schools, and I know you went to two separate high schools, did your high schools look anything like the high school in this movie?
No, my high school was one of the public high schools in town, and not only did it not look like that school in the movie, it actually looked way more like a prison. And in fact, it was the architect of the school was a former prison designer.
Yeah. Some would say high school is a little bit like a prison. Peter, what about you? What was your high school anything like that with the architecture?
Oh, no, it was nothing like it because I only had dudes in my high school. And it's part of the reason why
I'm sorry for you. Sorry for your loss.
Our platonic relationship really kicked off, Luke, because I'm very good at making relationship with other men.
Yes.
Our high school was an old elementary school converted to high school. It was a Catholic high school called De La Salle in originally Detroit, now in Warren. So not as glitz or glamour, and definitely not in Grosse Pointe.
Well, I know you have a lot of Grosse Pointe memories and expertise, so we'll get into it. Did you guys go to your 10-year high school reunion, by the way? Because this is a 10-year high school reunion in the movie. Did you guys go to, or was there one?
in typical fashion for a bunch of men, I don't even think we had one. So, or if we did, I wasn't invited.
Did get the invite.
We did, but there was actually Peter factors into the story of my 10-year high school reunion, probably without him even knowing.
Oh, wait, this is exclusive? This is exclusive.
Sure. The my 10-year high school reunion happened like the night before Thanksgiving. When everyone's like back in town visiting their families.
Yes.
And Peter and I was married at the time, and Peter, I think you were married to Lindsay at the time. Yeah, you must have been. Yeah, because this was the 10-year reunion. So anyway,
friend of the show, Lindsay, partner, Peter's partner.
Yeah, Peter's partner. Yes,
friend of the show.
And anyway, we had actually made plans to get together. Just Peter and Lindsay. I was going to skip the reunion and just hang out with Peter. And that particular evening, there was like an awful snowstorm, like just a truly awful snowstorm. And as I'm driving out to Peter's house to meet with him, we literally called him and canceled the plans because the roads were so bad. So not only did I not go to my high school reunion, I didn't even get to hang out with Peter that night.
That's sad. That is a sad story. Well,
that's why I don't know Michael didn't know about his 10-year reunion, because he canceled the plans on me.
That is a sad story, but at least you didn't murder anybody in the process. So that's a win. I didn't have a 10-year reunion, or I might have not gotten invited, but they're all doing more important things like saving lives and not having podcasts. So that's
no pun intended with the name of the podcast.
Yes. All right, friends, before we dive into our conversation about Grosse Pointe Blank, whether it's your first time here or you're a friend of the show, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Please remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and connect with us on social media. They're all in this show link, so I'm not going to read them out. We also have a Patreon where you can become a free or paid member and receive email alerts on new episodes and exclusive content. I recently did a new series I'm calling Lukewarm Takes on the Stranger Things finale. It's only available on Patreon, so if you want more current takes, off the cuff stuff, maybe Mike would jump in there because he's going to have some time off here in the future and not have any responsibility.
You're right. No responsibilities.
You can get all that on Patreon, and for the same price as a no topping omelet at a diner, you can become a friend of the show and get a least important thing sticker, handwritten note from me, and more special surprises to come. Supporting the show helps us cover the cost of our production tools and helps us make more episodes. As a reminder, if we hit 40 paid or free members, Mike Wynne will do a Twilight rewatch episode. So please subscribe and become a Patreon member just for that, to hear Mike Wynne go 4 hours on Twilight.
4 hours.
Please visit patreon.com/least important things to become a member. And most importantly, this is an indie podcast, so the best way you can help out is by recommending it to somebody. So please, next time you're small talking at your high school reunion, just recommend Least Important Things. All right, friends, where is the best place to recommend a podcast if you're hanging out in Grosse Pointe? Like, if it's coming up in the conversation, where are you at? Are you at the country club? Are you walking down the streets? Are you in Lake St. Clair swimming? Where is it?
Well, Pete, you tell us, because not only are you an OG Grosse Pointian like I am, but you are a current Grosse Pointian. You currently live in Grosse Pointe.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and Luke, and thanks to the color commentary, Mike. I would tell you that probably the best place to recommend a podcast in all of Grosse Pointe would be at the local Pancake House. There's only a few of them in the state. Pancake House collects an eclectic group of people from around the area, not only just Grosse Pointe, but the neighboring communities such as St. Clair Shores, Detroit, Warren, Roseville, East Point, Clinton Township, the greater Macomb County area, even some downriver folks. So if you want a very diverse podcast viewership, the Pancake House in Grosse Pointe would most certainly be my choice.
Oh, that's a great rec. Sounds like our kind of listeners, just hanging out at a breakfast joint, shooting the shit, talking about podcasts and conspiracy theories, and maybe about this movie. All right, friends, before we get into the discussion, we have a great advertiser here on the show. Peter, I don't know if you're familiar with our advertising model here, but we do an ad for every REWATCH episode, and I will never endorse an ad or a company or whoever's sponsoring the episode. I will never endorse it unless I truly believe in that organization, and we're so happy to have a sponsor for this episode. This episode is sponsored by the Ultimart. When you need a 90s nostalgia snack during an existential crisis, shop at the Ultimart. Now featuring 100% fewer explosions than the Grosse Pointe location. So they're really cleaning things up. I know they have a weird reputation, but check out Ultimart. Thanks for sponsoring today's episode. We really appreciate it. Great friends of the show, great supporters. We'll talk about them more. Now, Mike, we're headed into the back of the VHS. Peter, this is a section of the show. Let's just say you're at the Mammoth Video. What was the video store growing up in Grosse Pointe? Mammoth?
Oh, Luke, don't date us. We had Blockbusters.
Blockbuster.
And actually, and Michael's former employer, Michael, why don't you tell us about your former employer?
Yeah, I worked at a family video.
What? I didn't even know this.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
I don't think I did.
In fact, the family video hadn't changed in so long that probably the only movie on the shelves at the time in the mid 2000s was Grosse Pointe Blank.
It was a fun place to work, but yeah, Pete, you never went to Mammoth Video growing up?
I did go to Mammoth Video.
Okay.
That
was the place we went.
Wow, Mike, I can't believe I actually don't. If I knew you worked there, I forgot, and now that I know, again, we're gonna have to talk about this off air because I have a lot of questions.
Both the most interesting and the least exciting part of working at Family Video is having to invariably at 3:00 on a Tuesday rent out no less than 5 pornographic videos to a 40-year-old man who very clearly does not have a day job.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why Mammoth Video was the first to go under.
You're serving the community. There was a need, and you served it. Well, let's just imagine you're at Mammoth Video, you're at Family Video, and you're walking down the aisles, and you see a cover, and you say, "Hey, that says Grosse Pointe. I live in Grosse Pointe." And you pick it up and you turn it around, and you would read the description of this movie. Mike, can you read that description on the back of the VHS?
Yes, for the first time ever reading this.
Always a cold read, of course. You're at the video store.
Yes. Here's the killer comedy hit that's loaded with outrageous fun. For Martin Blank, John Cusack of Serendipity and High Fidelity fame, a hitman stuck in a career rut attending his 10-year high school reunion is about the last thing he's in the mood for. But when the prospects of rekindling an old flame, Minnie Driver of Good Will Hunting, and pulling off one final job convince him to go, things are looking up. That is, until Martin's arch rival, Dan Aykroyd, shows up aiming to blow the competition away. For hilarious comedy entertainment that's packed with action, Grosse Pointe Blank is a surefire knockout.
I do appreciate that on the back. Good Morning America just said, a very funny movie. That's their poll quote. It's a little simplified for this movie. If you'd keep on reading this VHS, you would learn that it's directed by George Armitage, who did one movie, Miami Blues. Didn't do a lot, so this is really his big peak movie. It was written by Tom Jankiewicz, D.V. DeVincentis, Steve Pink, and John Cusack was a writer. The music was
unfortunately, Luke, this movie probably would have been better if John Hughes, who was the director of the era, would have written the movie.
It was. We'll learn a little bit more about some of the choices that were made in the making of this movie. The music was by Joe Strummer of The Clash, which I think is a highlight. It's really cool. He kind of curated the music, and that's why there's so much. I think they probably just made so many scenes and they had the scene of Minnie Driver like working at a radio station because of that. Of course, it is starring John Cusack, Minnie Driver, Dan Aykroyd, Alan Arkin, Joan Cusack, Jeremy Piven, and Hank Azaria, young Hank Azaria. Love seeing him. Grosse Pointe Blank was released on April 11th, 1997. Gentlemen, that weekend you could have seen Anaconda, Liar Liar, or Selena in the theaters. All good choices. The budget was approximately $28 million, and it made roughly $31 million at the domestic box office.
Wasn't a flop. Was not a box office flop.
It wasn't a flop, but definitely not a big barn burner right out of the gate. This is definitely one of those slow burn movies that has gained a cult following over time. All right, let's get behind the scenes with some facts you can fact check. I'm not going to do the work for you. All four of the Cusacks are in this movie. Joan, John, Ann, and Bill. They appear in this movie. Obviously, Joan Joan and John are the main two leads.
Joan is arguably the best character.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Grosse Pointe Blank was not filmed in Grosse Pointe, sadly. It was primarily filmed in Los Angeles using locations like John Marshall High School for the high school scenes. But it does show some aerial shots of the neighborhoods, and most iconically along Lakeshore Drive. It really that's the Grosse Pointe shot. That's pretty much it. So it's a little disappointing because I wish this movie was actually filmed there. It would have been cool, but they do give us a nod in reality there. John Cusack, if you didn't know this, John Cusack and Jeremy Piven, high school buddies, and definitely it shows on camera. What would a night out in the 90s with those two be like? Can you imagine?
Lots of blow.
Lots of blow. It would have been it would be a long night. That's all I gotta say. War Inc. was made in 2008, and it's kind of set as the spiritual sequel of this movie. I think it was probably filmed in Eastern Europe, and it's very low budget, and Hilary Duff is in it. So I don't think it kind of matches up. But take a look if you want to. Tom Jankiewicz, who was raised in Sterling Heights, based many of the film's characters on his real-life friends from Madison Heights, Michigan. Tom didn't do a ton of work. This is really about him and his life growing up in Metro Detroit, which is pretty cool. All right, we're going to move on to OT's overall thoughts. As two gentlemen who grew up in Grosse Pointe, how accurate is Grosse Pointe Blank to what Grosse Pointe is actually like?
Grosse Pointe Blank was as accurate of a depiction of Grosse Pointe is how awful your spelling is of Grosse Pointe in your read.
You know what?
Grosse Pointe is spelled Grosse,
there it is.
and there is no E, and that is about as accurate and the best summation of how good Grosse Pointe Blank is.
I cannot spell this thing why is there so many E's?
I mean, I would tell you that, I think you hit the nail on the head with your facts that you didn't do for everybody. They had an aerial photography at the beginning of the movie to make you feel like you're on Lakeshore Drive, which, by the way, which is an interesting fact for someone that probably doesn't visit Grosse Pointe as often. A lot of those homes aren't there anymore. A lot of those homes have been demolished and rebuilt, which is a kind of an interesting fact. Some of them are still there. But I was watching the movie with my wife, and they were trying to show, I think, a little downtown area of Grosse Pointe. When he's first driving down, he's kind of looking out the window in the beginning of the movie, right? And it's Lindsay was joking around. She says, "I wish Grosse Pointe was this cool. Look at all this retail we have. There's no Quickie Mart or I think one of them was a laundromat, in Grosse Pointe. So, it did not depict Grosse Pointe life very accurately in my mind. Michael, I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like the closest that I can like really get to like how they depicted like that main drag, like that downtown. There is an area in Grosse Pointe called the Village. That like when if you don't look closely, if you kind of squint a little bit, it kind of looks like
beers. It looks
looks like the 3 blocks in the Village that exist, and there. So yeah, Pete's right, and I didn't expect the movie to be it's not about
it wasn't the Grosse Pointe the movie about the history of the town,
but Grosse Pointe notably has two primary high schools that are big rivals. There's other private schools, like Peter went to a private school. There's some private Catholic schools in the area. But the 2 public schools are Grosse Pointe North and Grosse Pointe South. So what I really want is a Varsity Blues about the Grosse Pointe North, Grosse Pointe South football games. And I actually, for the recording tonight, wore GPN versus GPS shirt. This is the oldest shirt that I own.
I was gonna say, where did you get that from? How did it survive?
How's it not the oldest shirt that I own?
How's it not deteriorated over time?
It's not even from when I was in high school. It's from when my sister was in high school, who was 6 years older than me. So
you know what? Testament to how good those Gilded quality shirts were back in the 90s.
Not today. Not the Amazon ones today. Those are trash.
A couple things that I thought were really interesting about the movie, and I don't know, Pete, if you saw this, because there were some moments where I thought that whoever wrote or did production design for the movie did really good research, because there are a handful of elements about the movie that are very Grosse Pointe. I'll give you an example. At the very end of the movie, when you see John Cusack's character drive into the driveway of Minnie Driver's house,
Yes.
you actually see a for sale sign outside at like the gate. That for sale sign is a very regional Grosse Pointe realty company, Higby Maxon. And
wow, shout out to Higby Maxon.
shout out to Higby Maxon. And so when I saw that, I was like, wow, I've never seen that sign outside of Grosse Pointe. And I looked it up, and yeah, they're like a Grosse Pointe realtor. And then another thing is, it features prominently in different shots in the movie, but the sign for the city of Grosse Pointe is actually really reminiscent of the city of Grosse Pointe signs that you see around town. They got the date wrong, the established date. I looked that up, but that's okay. And then there's a shot where John Cusack is like looking in the window of the radio station, and you see like Minnie Driver on the other side. And there's this shot, and you actually see some decals on the windows, like, I don't know what do you like the window, like you would see like stickers right on the windows. And in the bottom right hand corner is like a very specific Grosse Pointe like logo or sticker that I haven't seen elsewhere. So there's like these very small like elements that the production design like actually picked up on. And then there's a couple references in the dialogue that I thought were interesting, that like it makes sense if this Tom Jankowicz actually like came from Detroit,
Yeah.
Or the area, because like the Devil's Night reference that Minnie Driver actually
Yeah, I
makes,
was like, what is that?
yeah,
Michigan. It's a Michigan thing, but it's predominantly in Metro Detroit.
Yeah, it's a very Detroit thing. Like Devil's Night is the night before Halloween,
Right.
and it is known for
mischief,
arson. Yeah, mischief and arson around the city, and it was a huge issue in the 80s and 90s. And it's gotten a lot better, but it is still an issue in Metro Detroit. And that is really something that, like, if the writers were from Los Angeles, like, sure, they pick up on these production design elements because they go and do their research or their visits, but that is a very like specific cultural thing that you would not understand. And it's kind of a throwaway line, but it's one of those things that's like, oh, this is a really well researched script.
Yeah,
I would argue, just to kind of further that, to compound on Michael's point, the director writer Tom Jankowicz, being from Macomb County, added really interesting elements, as Michael just denoted previously, related to Grosse Pointe-esque or very Metro Detroit-based themes such as Devil's Night. The sad thing is, all of that gets overwhelmed by the fact that none of the acting and the charisma in the mentality of the movie has anything to do with a Midwesterner or Grosse Pointe. So in terms of spreading culture about the city and accuracy about the city, aside from him putting a window sticker on the bottom of Minnie Driver's studio, my point being, it's easily overlooked unless you're looking for it, as Michael obviously did.
Yeah, well, Peter, to build off your point, to go into the thing that we're going to talk about next, is how this movie resonates like locally for us. This is like a movie that does not get talked about. Like Grosse Pointe does not celebrate this movie. It is not something that I only knew about it growing up because I had a teacher who had the movie poster in his classroom, but it was like, it almost looked like a joke. Like, oh, that's a gag. Like John Cusack wouldn't do a movie. Yeah. And so like this movie is not like, it's like cool, Grosse Pointe was in a movie, but like I would say that Grosse Pointe isn't even a part of Gran Torino, but we care more about Gran Torino because of the last shot being in Grosse Pointe than we do about Grosse Pointe Blank.
There was more, I would say there was more camaraderie for sure about Gran Torino than there was about Grosse Pointe, even though the bulk of Gran Torino also was not shot, even though it took place in Detroit, right? That was his whole Clint Eastwood's whole persona. But however, let me give you a good allegory or a good example of what Grosse Pointers think about Grosse Pointe Blank. And it's actually going to phone a friend to my father. I texted him the night I was watching Grosse Pointe Blank. I said, Lindsay and I are watching Grosse Pointe Blank RN, LOL. All my dad's response back is, stupid.
And then Jack, Pete's dad, would be the authority on this because Jack is a lifelong Grosse Pointer.
In a nutshell, I think that's how Grosse Pointers view it. I think it was such a flop in terms of the culture. I think there was probably at the time and it's probably something I should ask my dad, but I think at the time the the discussion with the Grosse Pointe South, whether they were going to allow the filming to be there because of the murderer, hitman, obviously, which they ultimately did not. I'm sure there was such a hullabaloo about tainting Grosse Pointe's image, which at the time in the 80s and 90s was predominantly at its peak of hegemony, global or nationally, most certainly because the auto industry was still booming in Michigan. I think it just became a write-off show for a lot of people. I think they said it's not filmed here. It doesn't have really much to do with John Cusack, haha, Dan Aykroyd, haha. But it's not The Great Outdoors. It's not Blues Brothers. It's not these other predominant films that these guys have been in, Uncle Buck, whatever, so I think it's a flyover movie for a lot of people here locally. And I learned about Grosse Pointe Blank it's shown on AMC on Comcast, and you flip through, you're like, oh, what's Grosse Pointe Blank? It's spelled better than Luke is spelled, I'll tell you that much.
The E's are very confusing. I just think it's a gross. I just wanted it to be gross. But why the two E's? Is that like a French thing?
It's a more sophisticated gross.
Well, thank you for your insights. Yeah, I think it's pretty typical where sometimes local movies that are, thank you, Mike's emphasizing the E in the script. Sometimes movies are adopted locally because they're shot there because they knew the star stayed at the Airbnb or because they were shooting on the streets and people met him at the diner. Other times it's beloved because it takes place in the city, like RoboCop, and they built a RoboCop in Detroit, and that was shot in Dallas. And then other times a movie is like takes the name of a town and they do not care at all because one, it maybe doesn't reflect the town or there's just no connection to it. Obviously, you mentioned, Pete, about this is not a John Hughes movie. It is a cult comedy, which we'll get into a little bit about why. And I think that's probably a big part of that. It wasn't going to be this adopted, and it's not like John Cusack's from Michigan. He's a Chicago guy anyway. So there's no reason to.
I would argue, just not to cut you off, Luke, but I would argue that look at John Hughes. John Hughes was actually, he went to Grosse Pointe South for a minute, right? And he was Mr. Chicago.
Yeah.
That's all of his movies, for the most part, were set in Chicago, but every movie had an element of Detroit in it. Look at Cameron with the Red Wings shirt and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. In Home Alone, there's Detroit references, right? So my point is, Chicago and Detroit, specifically Grosse Pointe, a lot of Chicagoans knew Grosse Pointe. There's a lot more crossover than I think there is today.
Yeah, and look, all of John Hughes's movies are like really different than what Grosse Pointe Blank was ever really going to be. It's about a hitman, right? But the truth is, John Hughes made way more movies about Grosse Pointe than people realize.
Right.
And this movie is about as far from Grosse Pointe as it could be.
Yes. That's a great point, Mike. Speaking of Cusack, what's your guys' take on Cusack? He's obviously a huge Gen X icon. He is the epitome of I'm too cool for school. Obviously, it's comedic that he's a hitman. I thought maybe he was early Treadstone, Jason Bourne, because he has the pen kill in this movie, and it's a CIA sponsored program that he was in. Or you could say this is a John Wick universe movie because there's this idea of all these hitmen in this network and third party. But what were your guys' take on Cusack? Do you like him? Do you like him in this role?
I do really like John Cusack. In a lot of ways, I feel like he's a poor man's Charlie Sheen, but more successful. Better success with
who has more money right now? That's what I'm curious.
Yeah, it didn't have the issues that Sheen did, I suppose. But I do like Cusack. I like most of his movies. I always think of him in Say Anything with the boombox on the lawn.
Right.
That's the iconic image for me of John Cusack. But I love Cusack.
Yeah, and this is part of his '90s run, right? It starts with Say Anything, and it probably goes all the way up to High Fidelity, Runaway Jury, early 2000s. But he is the guy. He's the cool guy. Pete, what about you? Are you a Cusack guy?
I'm not. It's a successful family, obviously. I mean, we named a lot of them there in this movie. I believe his dad was in the business. I think his dad was maybe a director, if I recall, or an actor.
Yeah, they're in the business.
I actually, truthfully, appreciate his sister Joan more than I think I do him. Nothing in particular, other than I think his acting just seems a little unauthentic to me. I think he doesn't grasp the roles as well as other actors could. Now, I appreciate that he was in a time and place, like his predominant movie acting era was 80s and 90s, right? And he was playing a specific role by which he didn't need to be, a Tom Cruise in Top Gun or, so on and so forth. But he's also not a John Candy.
Right.
So it's a weird mixture role that's just blah that I think he had I think he actually, in summation, fits this movie well because it's a cult following classic, and that's who follows John Cusack. I do not think John Cusack is a hegemonic actor in Hollywood. Right. I really don't.
I think that's a great point. And he at this point, it was cool to be indie. It was cool to be a cult comedy, and that's who his characters are all. They're all his peak characters are all similar. John Cusack, kind of aloof. I'm too cool. I'm misunderstood kind of guys. But I think it fits, and I think that's a good point. That the way this movie was made, they shot three different types of the script, three different ways, essentially three different types of movies. They shot it serious, they shot it kind of middle of the road, and then they shot a bombastic, crazy one. And the bombastic, crazy one is the one we get. So it works, but I think this works only in a place and time, and I think it only works because John Cusack is the vehicle. It could have been bad if he tried to play it serious. It probably wouldn't have worked. And I think obviously having the casting that they have, which we'll get into, is part of that. All right, let's move on to leasties and besties. This is our superlative awards section. We're going to start out with the leasties. First one is least assassin move. Obviously, this is a comedy. This is not the Jason Bourne series, which we've covered. This is pretty inauthentic. The first one that, and gentlemen, please say what one stands out to you, but you can also add ones if you have any. First for me is just Dan Aykroyd as a hitman. That just, the first time you see him with those two huge pistols, like in front of the hotel, just shooting, and I was like, oh, we're in for a treat here.
You don't even have to read the rest of them. This will be my vote for like the least assassin move. He is the most convincing assassin. Like, it was very clear that I'm sure they brought in like somebody to like show them like, hey, this is how you shoot a gun, or this is what it looks like when you're holding a gun. And he was like, that's great, don't care.
No, don't care. I'm gonna do what I want.
He's like doing guerrilla rows with the gun.
It's absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. All right, some other least assassin moves: tipping off the government agents and then following them around, which is another Dan Aykroyd move. Telling people you're an assassin. That's an interesting move, just to come out with it. Trying to hook up with your high school girlfriend without realizing that the hit you've been assigned to is her dad. Not the best move. There's not a lot of research. And then gossiping with fellow assassins about blank shooting a dog. which I kind of, I don't love the action, but I like the gossip of between the assassins and the shade that's thrown. What's the least assassin move out of all of these guys? Peter, we'll start with you since Mike has his pretty locked in.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I agree with wholeheartedly with both you and Mike. I think Dan Aykroyd is a hitman. I think that is the least assassin move you can make. I mean, although Dan Aykroyd has some more serious roles in his later career, I think at this juncture, it's the most like obnoxious, cast. I mean, honestly, it makes the movie more enjoyable though.
It does. I think if you had a more serious character actor in that role, it wouldn't have worked. I think having him in that role, it allows us as an audience, it allows me to understand, okay, this is a big joke. Like it's a joke. We're here to laugh. It's not supposed to be a serious.
Which is really opposite of how the movie started. I mean, the movie started with some comedic relief. When Cusack's talking to his secretary, while he has the sniper out while he's shooting the guy in the street. But that was actually a fairly serious action scene, in my opinion. You know, he's
Oh
like,
yeah, it could be like in a Marvel movie today.
yeah,
Like
I mean, he's
that's
like, looking, he's eyeing the guy down, he's riding the bike or the roller skates, whatever he was on, and then all of a sudden he shoots the guys, and then the revolvers come out and shoot the security guys behind him. My point is, like, the movie starts like, wow, it's gonna be a good one. It's intense, and
yeah.
all of a
You're
sudden
like,
Dan
is this?
Aykroyd shows up 5 minutes later and meets Cusack up. You're like, what is going on in this movie?
I think about a movie like The Boondock Saints, which I don't know if you both have seen. Similar era, similar kind of cult following, ultra violent, but also the style's kind of weird and it's almost unrealistic. Willem Dafoe's doing this crazy performance, but that works that way. But this movie kind of goes the other way. Instead of like leaning into the crazy violent reality of it, it tells the audience.
But you know who would have been even better than we keep comparing this to a John Hughes movie because it's the era that we're talking about. But you know who would be better if you want some comedic relief but a good action would be like a Quentin Tarantino directorship, right?
Yeah,
like a Django, or where he throws comedic relief in with very, very serious topics or action, and he blends it so masterfully compared to what we just watched with Grosse Pointe Blank.
Right. Ironically, I don't know if you guys caught this. In the Ultimart, there is a cutout of Pulp Fiction. You can see Sam Jackson. Do you guys see that? And so it's right during this era of, I think a lot of what Hollywood wanted is give us what Pulp Fiction is. Like, give us that. Yeah. It was definitely a trend. And because watching this movie, you're like, this would never get made like today.
No.
Maybe straight to Netflix, I mean, maybe Luke, Amazon.
Let's be candid. You, Mike, and I could make this movie today. I mean, with
shot on
iPhone.
Yeah, Grosse Pointe 2.
The one of the things I want to say about this category, because we don't have a best assassin move, but the telling people you're an assassin, I low key, I think that's a really good assassin move, because when I was watching the movie with Shannon, I told her, I'm like, if you watch the movie, as in every interaction he has where he tells people he is an assassin, nobody believes him except for her dad. Her dad is the only one
best part
who actually believes him. And then you learn why. It's because, he's the only one that actually would do anything that would deserve a hitman to exist.
One of my favorite quotes is, we'll talk about it later. Did Shannon have a Brie paradox? This is the scene where if you have a partner watching, or Lindsay, did they both have paradoxes? We call it the Brie paradox in front of the show, Brie Warson, where essentially they like either get up or say like, this is ridiculous.
Yes. At the beginning, she powered through it, but there was a mass of disinterest when she started to scroll TikTok on her phone, and I knew.
Yeah, it's usually this part of the Brie paradox is either you look up from your device or you look back at your device. That's kind of is what it is.
I don't know. Shannon enjoyed the movie. I know that we watched it and she really liked it. Minnie Driver in this movie, because that was maybe the Brie paradox. Is she's like, we're supposed to believe this is their 10-year reunion, you know, and Minnie Driver is actually 27 in this movie.
So
it would be her 10-year reunion, but she looks so much older. I think we look back on these older movies, and a lot of times people look older than
right.
Back in the day, people look older.
It's called cigarettes, junk food.
Yeah, are you saying the opposite of Landman, where his 17-year-old daughter is really like 30 in real life?
Yeah. So I mean, and John Cusack at the time of filming was like between 33 and 35 or something like that. So it wasn't too far a stretch, but it also was like, you guys look like you're in your 40s.
Yeah, they do not look like it's their 10-year high school reunion. That's for sure. All right, we've already talked about some details here, but what's the least accurate Grosse Pointe detail? I had a few, but I want to hear your thoughts. The neighborhood security officer, I'm putting a question mark on this. Is that a thing in Grosse Pointe? Like a gated community or like a neighborhood that has a specific security guard?
Does Windmill Point have a security team?
Yeah, Windmill Point does. Probably the most prominent one will be Provincial, which still has a gate guard. And actually, I would say that there's some accuracy there in the higher, the wealthier kind of home areas in Grosse Pointe. There's definitely security officers. So I'm going to refute your least accurate detail.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I wanted to double check because I was like, that might be accurate.
it's like kind of painful to admit that this is accurate about Grosse Pointe, but yes, it is.
Oh, I get it.
There's a scene, and we're going to something more accurate, but Michael already alluded to some of these earlier with some Grosse Pointe-esque, but there's a scene where Cusack and Minnie are leaving a bar, and it's
the Hippo Club. The Hippo Club.
And it has a big wood exterior, and that looks identical. Michael may have not spent too much time there, but I've spent more time there in my adult life. I live down there, to Rustic Cabin, which is on Kercheval all the way down in the park, which is a big Grosse Pointe South bar. It's been there for like 100 years, still open. And actually, that was a fairly accurate depiction of Rustic Cabin. I will find that picture so I can share it with you guys, so you guys can see what I'm talking about.
Oh man, I was gonna say that the Hippo Bar is my least accurate detail, only because of the name. Like we would never have a restaurant called the Hippo
that sounds
Bar.
like an LA name. Okay, yeah, definitely the same look. For those watching
true.
on YouTube, that's a very similar look where it's got an all wood exterior, very like prominent. That's what that location is.
Because the next one you're going to mention, Luke, is indie radio station, and I actually think that is pretty accurate Grosse Pointe, because I don't know if we had specifically like an indie radio station, although I think we do, but we have Grosse Pointe has its own like newspaper, like the Grosse Pointe News.
Oh, okay.
So I and I'll be honest, not a huge fan of the Grosse Pointe News.
Hot take alert.
Hot take.
Mike
hot
went
take.
out on
news.
Grosse Pointe.
I'm going to say right now, my
high school newspaper is better than
the Grosse Pointe News.
yeah, I've heard that before, listeners.
Except it was true. So anyway, yeah, I'm trying to think of like other details. Like I think what Pete mentioned earlier, when you're watching the movie and you're seeing them drive around and you see like all this retail, like that is the least accurate Grosse Pointe.
Without a doubt, the retail was overzealous at best, and like Michael said, the Village and the Hill at the time in Grosse Pointe, just to paint a picture for you guys, were very high end retail establishments. I mean, you're talking high end men's haberdasheries. You're talking about Jacobson's, which was in the Hill, or excuse me, the Village at the time, which was eventually Hudson's, Macy's, whatever. And so when they're showing him driving down, presumably Kercheval, which is the main drag in Grosse Pointe, that would have that retail, and you're seeing again the laundromats. You're seeing, these really, I would entry level is the wrong word, but
quaint,
more common,
like Americana type of like small town,
more common, retail that you would get in a larger city for people to live in apartments around there because they need a laundromat, for example. That's not Grosse Pointe.
This is such an indulgent podcast, and I absolutely love it. It will be the least listened to podcast for all of least.
We have a big market in Grosse Pointe. I've offended all of them by my misspelling. If I publish this episode and miss one of the E's, I might have to do it on purpose.
I was just thinking of another thing too, Pete. You'll have to tell me if this is different, but the water level of Lake St. Clair is inaccurate, because in the movie it's quite high, and so I'm like, there's
I wonder if when they shot it, it was high at that point.
Yeah, it does fluctuate. We were at an all-time high about 5 years ago, and now we're back to historical lows, actually just below the historical average. So it's dipped back down, but it does ebb and flow. We could thank the Army Corps of Engineers about that, who control the locks.
Come on, get on it. Get on it. Why weren't they in this movie?
We know someone in the Navy. Maybe we can pull some strings.
You guys know someone in the Navy. I'm sure that's their top priority. All right, let's move on.
Interestingly enough, Michael and Luke, I stand somewhat corrected, but I'm reading an article from 2013, Fire Destroys Michigan Bar. The bar was best known for inspiring the name The Hippo Club in the movie Grosse Pointe Blank.
Oh.
The owner of Hippo's Bar in Hamtramck Sunday Night Watch as the fire destroyed his business of 23 years. So that did not, inspire the exterior look, which was probably Rustic Cabin at the time. Again, because it was a big Grosse Pointe South bar. But apparently the name was from a bar in Hamtramck, which must have been where some of the movie, directors or producers or whatever must have been aware of that bar, because it's pretty random.
Yeah,
Hamtramck's nowhere near Grosse Pointe.
No,
well,
is
there a Chrysler plant in Hamtramck, right?
There was, right?
General Motors.
I was gonna say, because Tom Jankowicz's mom was an engineer for Chrysler, so I was wondering if maybe he hung out in Hamtramck, but maybe not, because it's a GM plant. Never mind.
I could be wrong, by the way. We'll have to fact check
I think
that.
you're right. I think
That's
you're
all
right.
right. Well, we're not going to do the work. That's for
Yeah,
that's
that's for the
that's really
listeners.
the listeners, the diehards. All right, this one is a little bit more agnostic, and none of us went to our high school reunions, but least likely to happen at a high school reunion. Asking someone you went to high school to go with you as a date, bringing a baby to your reunion. There was a full baby brought to the reunion. Wearing a wedding dress and tux to a reunion, or a full open bar served in a high school gymnasium.
Oh, these are good.
What's the least likely to happen at a high school reunion? Maybe in the 90s, but all these were wild.
I'm gonna go ahead and throw out the wearing a wedding dress and a tux to your reunion. I think it's plausible that two people that are single rekindled prior or at the reunion. I could see a girl bring a baby to the reunion because she wants to show the baby off, which would be kind of strange, but there's people like that out there. And a full open bar, everyone's over 21. That doesn't surprise me too much. So I think wearing a wedding dress and a tux to a reunion is got to be it.
Weird move. Weird move.
Yeah, I got to agree. I was going to go that direction too. It made me cringe so much.
Do you think they got married right before and then went to, that was like, oh, we got a free reception?
I don't know.
I don't know what the thought, maybe
man.
that was a 90s thing. That it was the oddest thing to see.
It's funny. So like, it sounds like me and Peter didn't have a 10-year reunion. So maybe we're not the best to answer this question.
Yeah, we're not experts. Lovers, not experts.
I also went to a school with all dudes, so none of that
When I was considering going to my 10-year, because I did consider it, but if I'm being totally honest, okay, moment of honesty, guys.
Yes.
The only reason I wanted to go to my high school reunion was to show off how hot I thought my wife was.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, that's why I
married
feel like
a hot wife, and nobody in my high school was dating me. But
you didn't want to rent the Lamborghini and show everybody you're super rich.
No. Why lie when I can bring my Lamborghini and show
I
got this for life.
What's the timestamp on this? I'll send this to Shannon.
One thing, Luke, that I think we should all keep in mind, and that I think the listeners and the viewers that support your podcast keep in mind, is let's talk about the era of when this movie was made, right? We're talking about these things that are unusual to happen at a high school reunion, right? And we're like, that wouldn't happen today. It's 2026, newly 2026. Well, I don't know. You have Biggie getting shot. You got Tupac getting shot. You got Clinton in office, right? We have to put ourselves into that era.
That's true.
And I'm going to tell you, saying all that, I actually still don't think any of that stuff would have happened.
I can't imagine wearing a wedding dress and tux. The assassins at the high school reunion seem more plausible than that. All right, gents, let's move on to besties. Speaking of 90s, speaking of putting ourselves there, what is the most 90s thing, the best 90s thing from this movie? Obviously the music. There a couple artists are shouted out as Minnie Driver's character as a DJ, Massive Attack, Public Enemy, Morphine, The Clash, and the Pogues. I think that was all in that stretch of like throwbacks. The music is pretty awesome everywhere. Best 90s thing, Minnie Driver. Just, thank you. Yes. Best 90s things in the Ultimart. This is what I noticed in the Ultimart. A Doom 2 arcade game, of course. The fictional cutouts of Pulp Fiction, just Slim Jims in general, just like a packet of Slim Jims. The Red Wings cap, the snapback. How much is that going for in a Corktown thrift store? What is that like? Are we talking $50, $60, or is that like up in the 120? If we're talking about that 90s snapback.
I don't know, Luke. I mean, I can probably order on Temu and get it delivered to my house tomorrow for about $2.99.
Yeah, I got to buy them in quantities of 70 though.
And then the last 90s thing is just the general sarcasm, whining, shots at the system, and disdain for just anything corporate or big. What's the best 90s thing in this movie?
For me, I would say the most nostalgic thing would be the Ultimart. Mm-hmm. I think that is a unique, that brings back memories of my childhood, going into a convenience store, seeing, posters on walls, being able to get, some of those items at those, convenience stores. Not that you can't get them now, but the feel of a 7-Eleven or gas station today is much different than when it was in the 90s. And so I think that that's probably, I mean, the music always brings people back. I think that that's just kind of a given. And for that reason, I think it's a cop out to recommend that, just because I think that's probably always number one. But I
Right.
really think that the Ultimart is really the most nostalgic thing to me in the movie.
Mike, what about you?
I think it's got to be Minnie Driver for me. Like, she made
Yeah.
a whole career out of 2 movies in 1997, and it's kind of funny because, like, if you look at the rest of what she's been in, it's like, what have you been doing? Like, you probably could have selected any project you wanted after Good Will Hunting, um, and Grosse Pointe Blank wasn't like a bad movie. It critically it was fine. Um, but yeah, I mean, like,
She had an
she's
FX TV series for a while, I think, in the 2000s. But yeah, it's actually a shame. I wish she was in more because she's so
yeah,
charismatic, and she's doing an American accent, which is pretty good in this movie.
she slips up more than a few
There's a
times.
few times, but overall pretty good. I mean, it's not like they weren't trying to go for like a realistic drama. We know that, but
Yeah, but she is. I mean, for me, um, she's an icon of the '90s, and she wasn't even like she didn't even have like a huge run.
yeah, she didn't. She should have had a much bigger run. I would have loved to see her in more, but yeah, I'm gonna agree, Mike. That's a big one for me. I think if you love Good Will Hunting too, it's just nice to have like see her on screen in a different movie in a different character, but still is like she's like that balance of like she's super beautiful and gorgeous and charismatic, but she's also like cool and down to earth. She like captures that, and she captures that in Good Will Hunting too.
She's the best acting in the movie for sure.
Yes, she's doing a lot of work to keep this movie fun and entertaining.
She's half the reason why I made money and didn't lose money.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right, best Detroit/Michigan reference, and there was a decent amount of them. Minnie Driver's character says Paris playing at the Cobo Hall, so just music at Cobo Hall. I think that's a fun reference. The blue and white Michigan license plates that brought me back, just like the bright blue and white. The quote, "That was our Michigan militia," which has a double meaning now. That was interesting to hear with fresh ears here in 2026. Slipping on the ice into Lake St. Clair. I think one of the high school reunion people talked about slipping on the ice into the lake, and that's why she was hurt. One of the best quotes. "Is that a Beamer? That's sacrilege in Detroit." And then another fun one. This comes from the teacher. "You've been Detroit's most famous disappearing act since White Flight." And then the whole idea of the Workers of the World Unite Assassins Union, the unionizing of the assassins, that just feels very Detroit. What's your favorite Detroit Grosse Pointe reference?
The quote about a Beamer, it being
Yeah.
in Detroit. Now, let me tell this story quick about my dad. So my dad was an attorney in Detroit. He did product liability, so he worked with a lot of companies in Detroit. And he didn't personally work with any of the big three, but his firm did.
Yeah.
And
Everyone works for the big three in some capacity in Metro Detroit.
sure, yeah. And he used to drive a Cadillac. And one day I asked him, I'm like, hey, how come? And we were a Ford family for the most part, and plus a Cadillac, right? So a Ford family plus a Cadillac. But anyway, I asked my dad, like,
People
hey,
who
how
are
come?
not from Michigan are like, what does that mean? A Ford family?
Yeah, we're a Ford family. My
I
grandfather
just have in
worked
context for our
Ford,
listeners
and
not from Metro Detroit or Michigan. It's like
we
that
were a
meant
Ford
something.
family,
That
man.
means something.
Yeah, no, my grandfather worked for Ford, and he was such a Ford man that he made sure that the tractor he bought for his farm was a Ford. And but
Anyways,
anyway,
go ahead.
so I asked my dad, I'm like, Dad, why won't you drive like a Lexus? He's like, I can't drive a Lexus. And I'm like, why not? It's a nice car. Well, okay, why not like an Acura or one of these other car companies? And he's like, I can't. I can't. I have to drive an American made car. I'm like, why? Like, why is it such a big deal? He's like, because, Michael, you don't understand. I work in Detroit and I service clients who do business in automotive. And when I show up for a meeting, when I show up to my clients and I show up in a foreign car, that can be offensive. That can be an affront to their business. And even if what I'm meeting with them about has nothing to do with automotive, they have business interests in automotive and in this city. And if I show up in anything that doesn't represent this city, then I'm not putting my best foot forward.
And
that's actually a really good point, Michael, because my father had a similar experience where I still only drive American cars, but he predominantly always did for the same reason. Then his favorite story is a client that he still has today is a big tier 1 supplier for Ford Motor Company for the most part. And he got the account maybe 40 years ago at this point. And he pulled up and met the owner of the company. And he said, well, so what happened with your previous relationship? Thanks for doing business with me, but what happened to your previous relationship? He said, the guy drove a BMW. That's it. That's literally it.
What?
Yeah. Make or break.
Yeah. It's very cultish about Detroit, but when you consider, like, especially in light of 2008, which this movie is agnostic to, right? But
yes,
I mean, the motor and the automotive industry drives Detroit. I mean, that's just,
it's a company town. It's the largest company town in the world.
Let's not forget, in going back to your point, Luke, that everyone makes money off of the big three at some point. But let's not forget, specifically in this era, that the big three, General Motors, I think it's still by the time this movie was made, was still Fortune 1. Exxon did not usurp it at that level in terms of revenue. But it's basically General Motors, Ford Motor Company, maybe 5 or 6 was Chrysler, right? You combine the amount of revenues that those three companies had together that was producing money basically within the state of Michigan for the most part at that era was like 3 or 4x any other company in the world, right? So yeah, the margins weren't good. It's not like they were making Silicon Valley money like these guys were making today. I mean, Nvidia can go do $70 billion a quarter in revenue and make $30 billion in profit. However, all that meant was all of the hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue was just getting dispersed to suppliers, law firms, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, 4, whatever. Go down the lines. Everyone was making a piece of the money. So that's why the area was so wealthy for so long. And so anyway, in summation is that driving an American car was an important statement for a lot of people. Less so today, but still for a lot of people in industry, especially the old guard, it's important.
It would be like it. I mean, it's not quite to this degree, but like it would be like working for Google in a high up position and having Bing as your search engine. Like it's just like why? It's like, well, I like better. I like it better. I like the results. It's like, yeah, but Google is what feeds your family.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. That's a good comp. I think this line is the reason that I do really like this movie is that line specifically. It goes back to the behind the scenes that a Michigan guy wrote this movie. Like that would have never, like Peter, you mentioned earlier, that would have never been written if it was a Hollywood writer that had no context and they were just setting it in some Midwest town.
So I think my actual, my hot take reference for best Detroit, Michigan reference is probably you've been Detroit's most famous disappearing egg since the White Flight, because that encompasses so much history in one statement.
Yes.
Related to the city of Detroit and the Metro Detroit area as a whole. And it intertwines very well with the plot of the movie and the truism behind what happened to John Cusack when he left because he's an assassin, right? And I think that's, if I didn't choose, Michael already chose the Beamer comment related to sacrilege in Detroit, but I do think that is probably the most encompassing Detroit reference that you are going to see in this movie.
Is this an allegory for white flight and the transformation of Detroit over the 20th century? Maybe that's what this movie is. Maybe there's a deeper layer. Well, I'll have to write an essay about it. I'll get to work.
You can ask ChatGPT to do it for
you. All right, let's move on to best line. The great thing about this movie and a lot of movies in this era, a lot of good one-liners. So I'm going to rip through these. This is the dad mentioning when he's talking about assassins. Good for you. It's a growth industry. So he's the only one who actually believes that he's an assassin. Definitely a growth industry because the Soviet bloc fell. We know this. The market flooded. So it is a growth industry. This is the Ultimart employee. No, I'm not all right. I'm hurt. I'm pissed. And if I have to find a new job. Legend. But he's alive. I mentioned it at the top of the show. 10 years. One of my favorite lines from Hank Azaria. Oh, he's brown bagging it today. when he's referencing the pre-diner scene. One of my favorites. Those two characters are kind of throwaway characters, but there's a couple good one-lines because they obviously get decimated at the end of the movie. Another Detroit reference. What are you doing in Detroit? Do the Red Wings need a new goon? That's a fun one. And this is 97. This is
championship year.
Yeah,
96 they lost in the finals, and 97 they won it. So
this is peak Red Wings era. So we got the Red Wings hat and the Red Wings line. Next quote. This is another Hank Azaria one that I really appreciate. That kind of this could summarize a lot of action movies in the 90s. You got to wait until the bad guy kills the good guy. Then when you kill the bad guy, you're the good guy. It's half of the movies I watch. That's the plot. This one's from Joan Cusack, describing one of the assassins. He enjoys Native American art, ballroom dancing, and pornography.
He's the guy that was renting movies for me at Family Video.
Yeah, he was.
Right, yep.
He was. That was his cover. This one's from John Cusack. I killed the president of Paraguay with a fork. How have you been? Referencing what he's going to talk about at the reunion. This is a Piven one that I like. Do you have to do postgraduate work for that, or can you just jump right in? I'm curious about it. It's an open market, right? There is so much talk about this industry, the assassin industry, and maybe this is part of the allegory of Detroit. It's a growth industry. It's all this industry is happening around. There's open markets. I don't know. There's something there. And then last one, this one's subtle, but Joan Cusack is kind of a throwaway line, but she's talking about her 10-year high school reunion, and she says it was just as if just as if everyone had swelled. That was one of my favorite lines because it's just like, yeah, that's kind of what it is when you see somebody at your 10-year high school reunion. Like, we're not 18 anymore. We've all swelled in many ways. In many ways. What's your guys' favorite line? Mike, we'll start with you.
Oh man, I think my favorite line, even though it's kind of a throwaway, but I think it's not really a throwaway, but it doesn't advance the plot in any way. It's what the kid at the Ultimart says. He says, "No, I'm not all right.
No, I'm not right.
I'm hurt. I'm pissed. I have to find a new job."
Find a new job.
We died laughing at that line. That was so good.
That kid wins the movie with that line. He just
is
like,
you took the words right out of my mouth. I agree with that. I mean, I think, again, yeah, you're right. It's a throwaway line, but again, going back to the nostalgia of the whole thing, that would be a perfect example of a reaction from a kid in the 90s working at the local convenience store that just happened, and he's oblivious to the whole thing, right? Like, I think that for sure for me is the winner.
Oh, it's such a good one. It's LOL.
There's a lot of good lines in here.
Yeah, Joan Cusack, palm for every line she has.
Her monologue on the phone when she's switching back and forth was so good.
Yeah, when she's furious at the supplier.
Yes.
You know what's funny? This is gonna be a really millennia comment, but Joan Cusack has the same weird lispy voice. Obviously, that's her claim to fame, right? But I couldn't help every time I was watching her, and this movie came out far after this movie, Grosse Pointe Blank, but was Principal Mullins at School of Rock. When she's drinking beer at the table and Stevie Nicks comes on, she starts singing Stevie Nicks, and just the whole movie I couldn't not picture that scene while she was talking.
I think that's why we probably, at least I have more of an affinity for her, is because I think our generation sees her in that role, and we have so much love for that movie in that role, specifically in her portrayal.
Movie. That I think it should be on your next podcast episode.
It would be a good one.
I've never seen it.
What?
I've never seen it.
Have you
believe that? I've seriously never seen it.
That is
a movie store when it came out.
That's unbelievable. That movie healed me from COVID one year. I truly believe. I watched it, and that was better the next day.
It's just the truth.
We're gonna give you some homework. It sounds like we have a rerun coming up of this podcast.
We got a next episode. But a lot of great lines from Cusack. But yeah, I love the Ultimart Worker, so we'll give it to him. But a lot of fun one-liners. It's one of those movies that might be better to watch and recite than actually watch multiple times. Like, you maybe don't want to rewatch this movie, but the lines from the movie you hold on to. All right, we're gonna round up with best scene. Best scene from Grosse Pointe Blank. Start off with the Cusacks in the office. One of my favorite lines, I didn't put it in best line, is when he gives her the cash when she's kind of like destroying the office, which I love the look of that office. It's like very old school. And he says, "That's profit sharing. You deserve it." And then she goes, "All right."
It's so good.
When she gets the cash.
That should have been a candidate for best line, actually.
It should have been. But I wanted to put it in here because it ties with them. Anytime they're together talking is some of my favorite parts. Alan Arkin as the therapist in the therapist sessions. Those are some of my favorite scenes. The radio station reunion, the house showing, the Ultimart face off, or like the two scenes in the Ultimart, the reunion and fight, or the final shootout. What was your guys' favorite scene? One that you go back to?
I actually don't think it's any of these. I think it's the opening scene.
Ooh, I like it. Good call out.
I think the opening scene draws you into thinking it's more of a legit movie than it becomes. I think it's the right amount of action. The opening scene is very Quentin Tarantino-esque, right? It's very serious, well produced, but funny because he's talking to his assistant about this. She brings up the reunion, I think, of that scene, or later in that scene at that point, right? So I actually think that the opening scene is probably my favorite scene in the whole movie. I think it sets the stage, which is probably a forecast or a harbinger, for my opinion, of what I think about the movie. But we'll get to that at the end.
Man, I kind of waver on this one a little bit. I really like the therapist session because of Cusack. I really like this idea of a therapist trying to fire his client because he doesn't want to be hearing all of the, like, he's emotionally turmoiled by his client.
It's a good contrast.
I really like that. Like, independent of the movie itself, I just think that that's a really funny bit. But as far as the movie goes, I really like the final shootout where you kind of see him try to win back Minnie. And while also like saving the day. I just think that that's kind of humorous.
It is. It's like, it's definitely your end of the movie action sequence, and it's not really about the action at all. Especially when they killed the two feds, they just obliterate them, and it's not even a big deal. It's like, okay, I don't know why those guys were there. I'm gonna go with. There's a lot of fun ones. I do love when Piven first shows up and they first get in the car together and go to the house showing. I just love the contrast of him showing that house and them as buddies and the security guard. But I'm going to go with any time that the two Cusacks are in a scene together. That's kind of a cheat, but anytime they're together, it's just hilarious. I love the energy that they have as siblings. All right, friends, we're going to wrap up ratings, meetings, and what's next. Pete, I don't know. Are you on Letterboxd? If not, we got to get you on there. It's where all the cool kids are. It's the best social media. But basically, you can do a 1 to 5 star on Letterboxd. What would you rate this movie from 1 to 5 stars? 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And you can do half stars as well.
Thank you, Luke. If I had to be perfectly frank and honest, I'm going to give this movie a 1.5 star.
Oh my goodness.
I think it was awful. I could barely get through it. I thought it was terrible production. I think some of the references to Grosse Pointe were funny. I think the Cusacks together were a redeeming feature. I think Aykroyd was odd the whole movie. He felt uncomfortable. He made me uncomfortable. I don't think there was much chemistry between him and the rest of the cast. I just think that it was a miss. It was not a Ferris Bueller's Day Off. There's a lot of stupid movies in this era that are good movies, and this just was not one of them. And for that matter, I'm going to give it an extra half star above 1 because it was from Grosse Pointe. But other than that, I would not recommend this movie to watch for anybody. I just think it was that awful.
At the Pancake House, you're not saying, "Hey, watch this movie from the '90s. It's based off of Grosse Pointe." You're not going to be recommending it.
No,
Mike, are you going to be recommending this? What did you rate it?
I was actually pretty favorable. I'm not saying that the movie is it deserves any awards or anything like that, but I did give it 4 stars. I enjoyed it.
Pretty rare for Mike to have a high score like
that. My Letterboxd scores are generally very critical.
Yes.
But I mean, if it wasn't a Grosse Pointe, if it wasn't about half about Grosse Pointe, I probably would have given it like 3. So I
Yeah,
think it got
yeah.
a full star
It a
bump.
full Grosse Pointe
I think
star.
it got a full
yeah.
star bump. But I don't know. I think it's rewatchable personally. I think it's funny enough. Yeah, it's not a movie that plays on TV a lot at all.
No,
if ever.
surprisingly, you would
Yeah.
think
It
it would.
used to.
You
It
would
used
think
to,
it'd be
but not as
more.
much.
Yeah, this movie does not get.
So, Michael, I'm
play.
curious if the fact that you are a expat of Grosse Pointe, meaning you've since moved on to a different part of the state, and you know your
It's my
roots are here.
longing.
If there's a
Yes.
little bit of a longing that's giving you a little bit of an overvaluation on your movie rating.
I mean, diagnose me. Like, what do I got to do to get over this lack of Grosse Pointe in my life?
Let me give you an alternative answer. What else have you rated 4 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd?
Oh my gosh!
And then we can have a clerical argument or debate.
It's gonna be
the 5th Pirates of the Caribbean movie, maybe.
No. I Wake Up Dead Man I just watched and gave 4 stars.
Nice.
But hold on.
You've been getting soft. I think your
right,
your dad energy is coming early, and you're getting soft. You're getting soft, and it's coming out of Letterboxd.
Movie, you can rate
yeah,
that 5
he's
stars.
Frozen 2. He's got 5 stars.
I gave How the Grinch Stole Christmas 3 stars.
But that's accurate. The Jim Carrey one.
The Jim Carrey one.
Yeah, that seems like not like
I feel like that's a fair 3 star. It's middle of the road. I'd watch it. But it's not great.
The Untouchables 4 stars, and this movie is nowhere near The Untouchables. Like The Untouchables is a phenomenal movie.
But we got a full star bump because you're nostalgic for your hometown.
Let's put it this way: like GoldenEye, I gave 3.5, and this movie got a full star bump. 3 is probably where it ought to be.
Right, but follow your heart. Follow your heart.
I gave Jaws 4 stars.
Get out of here now! You're done. You're done. I gave this a 4 star. I think this is you either hate it, disgust it, or you like it. There's no, and you kind of got to be in on it right away. So I think if I watched this on a different day, if I didn't watch it with the context of I knew we were going to talk about it, I'm a very it's tied to emotion of when I watch the movie. So if I watch this movie on a plane, I'm on an American airline flight to Florida, I probably would have given it a 0.5 star. But I gave it a 4 star because I was so excited to talk to you guys about it.
The fact that you guys review this movie so high is such a paradox for how we opened this episode, which is you spelled gross wrong. I am grossed out by how much you like this movie. This movie was so awful on so many levels. There's so many better 80s and 90s flicks. I'd rather watch Camp Nowhere. I'd rather watch Camp Nowhere than this movie, which was the most low budget 90s movie in the world.
It's a flavor. If you're going to the ice cream store, you're going to Baskin Robbins. There's 31 flavors of movies.
This movie daiquiri ice. Nobody likes it except 2 people. That's what this movie is.
Hey, but they have it on the menu. There's a reason they have it on the menu. There's for the 2 people. I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. I was in the right mood. I think you have to be in the right mood for this movie, and for some reason it just hit. I think I had just watched High Fidelity last year for our best Chicago movies draft, and I think if you watch this and High Fidelity, the characters are highly related. It almost is like they're talking to each other. So I felt like I was prepared for the tone of this movie. Maybe not totally the tone, the bomb, like the assassin stuff, but I think I was prepared for the Cusack, and my mind was in the right place to enjoy this movie. But hey, we don't shame on people hating or loving. We embrace all the opinions here on Least Important Things. All right. This is going to be kind of a redundant question, but what does this movie mean to you guys? This could mean anything as I hate it, I love it, or it was an excuse to talk to my friends. But we'll start out with Mike. What does this movie mean to you?
This movie, it really only has like sentimental meaning in that, like, I'm from Grosse Pointe, right?
Right.
So like it gives me an opportunity to, like, as I'm watching it, to think about like my experience of Grosse Pointe, which brings back really positive memories. And then, like, you know, obviously, like, still being connected to my friends that I had when I grew up there, you know, Peter, being one of them.
Isn't one of them.
Is Peter's one of like two people that I talked to. So like Peter survived like a culling of my friends from Grosse Pointe.
Yeah, shout out to Christian too, right? He made it. I'm assuming he made it.
Christian made it, but we're still evaluating Christian, to be honest. The movie doesn't have like a lot of meaning for me. Like I did not watch it until I had actually already left Grosse Pointe, like 15 years ago. So yeah, the movie really only to me means this, like getting to do this and getting to hang out with Pete, getting to, getting ready to I'm loading up a happy birthday text for Pete here in a couple weeks because his birthday's coming up. So just getting to hang out with friends is really the only thing.
Peter, what about you? What does this movie mean to you besides being forced to watch it on a podcast?
I think the movie is absolutely awful. We already know my opinion about the movie. But I think the movie is a interesting data point for what Grosse Pointe meant culturally in the United States in the time period when it was made. So I think for that standpoint, I respect it because I respect what Grosse Pointe was and what it still is today. It's just different. And I respect the fact that the theme of the movie is to embrace the culture by which Michael and I grew up in. I mean, that is the kind of the purpose of the movie. Whether they did it well or not, obviously we've debated that for the entire hour. Some might say yes, some might say no, but I think at the end of the day, how we grew up was a very happenstance time and place in the 90s, where how everybody grew up in the United States, right? We were the echo of the baby boomer generation. There's a lot of us. The schools were full. The economy was good, especially in Michigan. The auto industry was booming. Life was very good. It was simple because we didn't know what anything was. We didn't have to pay bills. We didn't have any cell phones. There was no social media. Life was good. And so from that standpoint, I respect the hell out of the movie.
Beautiful.
But I think they could have done a better job with making it.
Yes. I think for me, this movie, watching it obviously I have this tie to Grosse Pointe, knowing both of you guys, and I've really did not spend a lot of time there, so it's exciting to watch it with you guys, knowing that you're both sons of Grosse Pointe. I really appreciated how many Michigan references were in this movie. I kind of attribute it, if you're not from Michigan or Detroit or Grosse Pointe, there's probably a lot of stuff that you miss, but I think the things that I noticed that made me enjoy the movie even more, we just do not have a big film pop culture reference point as Michiganders. Maybe we'll do a best Michigan movie episode, but there's just not a ton of them. So anytime I get to watch a movie that is either set or about Michigan, I kind of hold on to it, and I kind of adopt it, even if it's an ugly child. I'm gonna adopt it because the references are about how we grew up, and it's fun.
Well, it's kind of an interesting kind of last point I'll make, Luke, is that Detroit, Metro Detroit, has so much global and national influence on things, predominantly with music, right, which is Motown, the automotive industry, right, which is superfluous everywhere. But my point is that film and theater really did not represent Michigan or Detroit very well, for whatever reason, so, and I think that was probably because by the time film's always been really big, but maybe it was a time and place where the Midwest was just a good spot, but it wasn't cool, but it was a great place, which was the largest population center in the country. And that's since shifted, but it was a place you had family. It wasn't a cool place. It was in California. It was in New York, right?
Yeah, it wasn't where they were coming to film movies outside of the Hughes-verse, and that changed a little bit when we were in high school when there was the tax incentive. But there's not a ton of time stamps. Like if you're from Chicago and a 90s kid in Chicago, or you have parents that grew up in Chicago, I mean, you can, from the 60s through the 90s into the 2000s, you have movies that are set in that area, in the metro area, where we just do not have many in Michigan. So anytime you get to see one, even if they didn't film there, but they're referencing it, it's kind of a nice
and it's
snapshot.
Probably because of lack of an urban core. I mean, Detroit's post 1968 through basically 10 years ago did not have an urban core, so there's nothing cool to shoot. What are you going to shoot, suburbs?
Yeah, there's not much. I mean, they eventually started coming to Detroit to shoot action
decay.
movies and dystopian movies and horror movies.
Yeah.
That's what eventually happened, but doesn't feel like a John Hughes or a fun 90s movie. All right, friends. Thank you for watching, listening. Thank you, Pete, for joining us. We'll have to have you back for another movie, maybe School of Rock, because unbelievable. This is the biggest news of all the news we had here. Mike not ever watching School of Rock as a millennial is a disaster, but
he looks like he should be in a movie based on his outfit.
He does. Guys, but really, I'm not all right, and I'm hurt, and I'm pissed, and I have to find a new job. So we'll see ya. Thanks for joining us, Pete. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. And until next time, talk to you soon, friends.